Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep today into a book that sparks some serious conversation.
Grace Beverley's working hard, hardly working.
Exactly. It's tackling how we view work and, well, productivity in this kind of crazy modern world.
And what makes Beverley's take so interesting is that she's not just theorizing.
Right. She's lived it.
Built her own successful business, Tala, while she was still a student.
Talk about a juggling act.
She's proof you can achieve amazing things without buying into that always-on pressure.
Definitely. And she's super open about the tough parts, too, like,
The Tala website crashing during launch.
oh gosh, can you imagine?
Those real-life experiences make her ideas way more relatable, I think.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. The book really challenges how we define productivity.
It's like Beverley's calling out this whole hustle culture thing.
Like it's a trap.
Kind of.
Yeah.
She's honest about pushing herself too far while building Tala.
And how that backfire.
Makes a strong case against thinking long hours automatically equal good work. Even brings up studies showing countries with shorter work weeks can be more productive.
That's interesting.
Makes you wonder if working less can sometimes mean achieving more.
It's a total mind shift. We're so used to busy equaling productive.
Right. But Beverly's suggesting we flip that, focus on working smarter, not just harder.
Much needed perspective.
And then there's the whole issue of unpaid labor,
which often gets overlooked.
Beverley points out how it's framed as going above and beyond, but blurs the lines between dedication and getting taken advantage of.
For sure. Makes you ask who really benefits from all that extra unpaid time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we change our mindset?
Well, Beverley suggests focusing on strategies that make a real impact.
Not just how many hours we log.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. Prioritize the tasks that actually move the needle.
Love that practical approach. Now let's talk flow.
Oh, yeah. Beverly's big on that.
She believes in finding these micro passions, even in jobs we're not totally in love with.
It's like finding those little sparks of enjoyment that can fuel us.
And that ties into the whole idea of flow, right?
That mental state where you're so absorbed in something you lose track of time.
Been there.
Beverley argues that finding flow at work, even in small doses, is key.
Key for our enjoyment and the quality of what we produce.
Exactly.
When we're genuinely engaged, we tend to do our best work, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Beverley actually breaks down the flow experience into 3 stages.
Oh, like what?
There's the takeoff phase where you gain momentum.
Okay.
Then cruising altitude when you're totally immersed.
Ah, I see.
And finally landing, where you either finish the task or pause to recharge.
So it's not just about getting into flow, but managing it too.
Definitely. She's clear about that. Emphasizes it to avoid burnout.
Makes sense. I've definitely felt that being so in the zone that basic needs go out the window.
Like you're on autopilot.
Exactly. But Beverley offers advice on how to stay grounded while still riding that flow wave.
Setting boundaries is crucial.
How so?
Even something as simple as setting a timer can help.
To signal when to wrap up.
Or schedule something right after a flow session to create a natural stopping point.
Oh, smart. And what about getting into that flow state in the first place?
Beverley talks about finding your personal flow triggers.
The things that help us focus.
Like for her, it might be listening to a podcast on a related topic.
Makes sense.
Or revisiting past work for inspiration.
What works for one person might not work for another, though, right?
Exactly. It's all about experimenting and finding what gets you in that zone.
Like maybe listening to music, changing your environment, or a quick brainstorm with a colleague.
It's about finding your individual path to that optimal state.
Now onto another fascinating concept Beverley brings up. Creative uniqueness.
Interesting.
She believes we should bring our own flair to everything we do.
Even the boring stuff.
Even the boring stuff. It's rejecting cookie-cutter approaches and embracing individuality.
I like that. She's actually pretty critical of traditional education for this reason.
How so?
She thinks it often prioritizes conformity over real creative problem solving.
Like we're trained to find the one right answer instead of exploring possibilities.
Exactly. Limits our potential for innovation.
Now, this is where it gets really cool. Beverley outlines specific creativity triggers.
Ways to spark out-of-the-box thinking.
Some are about our environment, like moving to a coffee shop or a park to work.
Ah, a change of scenery.
Others are more mental, like picturing the ideal outcome of a project.
Interesting.
Or having those thought-provoking conversations that generate fresh ideas.
But it's not about forcing creativity into every situation, right?
Definitely, Beverley emphasizes understanding the task and who you're doing it for.
Like if your boss needs a simple report, You probably don't need an elaborate presentation.
It's about knowing when and where to apply that creative energy.
Making sure it actually aligns with what's needed.
Exactly. She
Oh.
actually gives some really insightful questions to guide us.
Like what?
Is there a tight deadline? Will being creative actually make the project better or just add more work?
Makes sense.
How will the person receiving your work perceive a change from the norm?
It's a framework for making those choices.
Now, another gem she brings up is embracing failure.
Interesting. How so?
She believes being willing to experiment and even mess up is key for growth.
It's about taking risks and seeing what happens.
Exactly. She even shares her own method for stress testing ideas before sharing them.
Oh, what does she do?
She forces herself to come up with 3 potential criticisms of her own work.
To anticipate pushback?
Exactly. It's about being proactive and prepared.
Very smart. It's like getting ahead of those yeah, but moments.
Precisely. Now let's shift gears a bit to something Beverley is clearly passionate about.
What's that?
The art of doing nothing.
Okay.
She argues that intentional downtime is absolutely essential.
But a luxury.
Not at all. It's about understanding our limits and giving ourselves permission to recharge.
She actually distinguishes between 2 types of doing nothing.
Really? Like what?
There's planned nothing, which is intentionally scheduled breaks,
Okay.
like weekends or evenings dedicated to self-care.
Makes sense.
Then there's fuck it nothing. Those times when you just have to surrender to exhaustion and prioritize rest.
Even if means changing plans.
Exactly. Both are crucial for our well-being.
I like that distinction. She's also very open about her own experiences with doing nothing.
In what way?
She shared how she used to overschedule herself socially just to avoid being alone.
It's refreshing to hear someone so successful admit to struggling with boundaries.
Absolutely. It highlights how important it is to be honest with ourselves about our needs.
What truly recharges us?
Right? Is it a quiet night at home? A walk in nature, connecting with loved ones?
We need to figure out what really nourishes us as individuals.
And she stresses planning those nothing periods, just like we schedule important meetings.
If it's not on the calendar, it probably won't happen.
So true. She even admits to scheduling her workouts, like doctor's appointments.
To make sure they don't get pushed aside.
It's about making those things a priority. Now let's talk about this having it all dilemma.
Okay.
Beverley breaks down how this phrase has evolved.
From what to what?
From Helen Gurley Brown's idea of female empowerment in the 80s to this pressure cooker of social media perfection we see today.
Interesting. So what's Beverly's take on it?
She argues that the modern having it all isn't so much about breaking barriers anymore.
But more about juggling a million roles flawlessly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to excel at work, have a vibrant social life, pursue hobbies, prioritize fitness.
All while appearing perfectly balanced.
It's exhausting.
And unrealistic for most people.
Definitely. And social media just amplifies that pressure.
Creates this echo chamber of seemingly perfect lives.
We end up comparing ourselves to these curated highlight reels and feeling inadequate.
Which can be incredibly damaging to our self-esteem.
While the having it all concept applies to everyone, Beverley acknowledges the specific challenges women face.
How so?
She brings up studies showing many employers still see motherhood as a potential career disruption.
Pointing to those subtle biases that still exist.
She asks some tough questions that we often avoid.
Like what?
Why is it okay to ask a woman about her family plans at work? But men rarely face that same scrutiny.
Interesting.
It shows this expectation that women should excel in both their family and work lives.
Often without enough support.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what's the solution to this whole having it all dilemma?
Well, Beverly encourages us to reject that one-size-fits-all notion.
And instead define our own all based on what matters to us.
Our own values and priorities.
It's about creating a life that feels authentic and fulfilling, not just Instagram-worthy.
Love that. She uses a great analogy, the life pie.
I've heard of that.
Each slice represents a different part of our lives. Work, relationships, self-care, personal growth, and so on.
Makes sense.
It's about consciously choosing what ingredients matter most to us and crafting a pie that reflects that.
So we get to decide what our own all looks like.
Exactly. And what I love about this analogy is it emphasizes flexibility.
How so?
Our priorities change over time, right?
Of course.
So our life pie can adapt. Some slices might get bigger or smaller, reflecting those changes.
It's about finding a balance that lets us honor our commitments without burning out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do we actually build our own life pie?
Well, Beverly gives some practical guidance.
Like what?
First, be brutally honest with yourself about what truly matters.
Those non-negotiable things.
Exactly. It might take some soul searching.
Like, are we doing things because we truly want to or because of societal pressure.
Or are we chasing goals that no longer align with what we value?
It's about being real with ourselves,
Then once we've identified our essential ingredients, it's time for planning.
just like we schedule our work tasks.
Exactly. Carve out time for those other crucial parts of our lives.
Whether it's family time, creative pursuits, or those must-do gym sessions.
It's about making those things concrete.
And being adaptable too, right?
Definitely, life throws curveballs.
All the time.
So our life pie needs to be flexible. If one week demands more work, maybe we shrink other slices temporarily.
To accommodate those shifts.
Yeah. It's about finding a rhythm that lets us manage those ups and downs without sacrificing our well-being.
Such a crucial reminder. Now let's dive a bit deeper into Beverley's thoughts on self-care.
Okay.
She challenges us to go beyond the superficial stuff.
Like bubble baths and face masks.
Exactly. It's about seeing self-care as a tool for boosting our productivity and well-being.
Taking it seriously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She emphasizes understanding what we truly need,
What activities actually help us recharge?
tuning into those internal signals and recognizing when we need a break.
Even if it goes against that always-on mentality.
Sometimes the most productive thing we can do is step away and rest.
Counterintuitive, but true.
She even suggests taking a sick day before we actually get sick.
Preventative maintenance for our well-being.
I can see how that might feel strange in our current work culture,
But it's about being proactive.
recognizing those early signs of burnout.
Exactly. She gives an example that many can relate to.
Oh, what's that?
That feeling of having a social commitment after a long day. You want to be a good friend, but, you'd be better off staying home and recharging.
Been there. What's the solution?
Honesty. She encourages us to be upfront with our friends about our needs.
That sometimes we need solo time to function.
And that it's not a reflection on our commitment to the friendship
It's about setting healthy boundaries
in all areas of our lives.
and being mindful of how we spend that nothing time.
Is it truly restorative?
Right. She warns against mindless scrolling on social media.
Which can be more draining than relaxing.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in those curated versions of reality.
Beverley suggests we step back and evaluate our relationship with social media.
How does it make us feel? Does it add value to our lives or take away from it?
It's a question worth asking.
She recommends intentional breaks from social media
Like putting our phones away during walks.
or designating specific times to check our feeds.
It's about taking back control of our attention.
Using technology intentionally instead of letting it use us.
She also offers practical tips for incorporating more doing nothing into our everyday lives.
Like why?
Simple things like taking a walk in nature, expressing gratitude,
Spending time doing things we enjoy.
reading, listening to music, quiet reflection.
I love those suggestions.
Yeah.
It's about finding those pockets of peace to recharge.
And remember, self-care isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's about experimenting and finding what works best for you.
What activities leave you feeling refreshed and energized?
What boundaries help you create a balance between work and a rest?
It's a journey.
So let's quickly review some key takeaways from Beverley's book.
Sounds good.
First, she challenges us to redefine productivity.
It's not about working till we drop.
It's about working smarter, focusing on effectiveness, not just hours worked,
Ditching that hustle culture mindset.
and embracing strategies that maximize output without sacrificing well-being,
Second, Beverley highlights the importance of finding flow in our work.
even if it's just in small moments.
Those micro passions can really spark creativity and boost motivation.
But we need to be mindful of managing our flow to avoid burnout,
Setting those boundaries and scheduling breaks.
to create a sustainable rhythm.
Third, Beverley urges us to bring our unique perspective to our work
Embrace those creativity triggers.
and find ways to express our individuality, even in seemingly mundane tasks.
But be strategic about it.
Right. Understand the task of the audience and the value a creative approach will bring.
Fourth, prioritize intentional downtime.
Schedule plan nothing and embrace fuck it nothing when needed.
Prioritize rest without guilt.
It's not the enemy of accomplishment.
And finally, let go of that one-size-fits-all idea of having it all
Define our own all based on our values.
and create a life pie that reflects that.
So many insightful things to think about. Now I'll turn things over to our expert for a final thought as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Beverley really pushes us to define what having it all truly means to us. So what ingredients are essential for your own life pie? And what actions can you take to create a life that reflects those priorities? Keep those questions in mind as we continue exploring the depths of working hard, hardly working. Beverley actually shares this story about a time when she really started questioning this whole productivity thing.
Oh, what happened?
It was when she launched Tala right in the middle of juggling a ton of academic deadlines.
Wow, launching a business and school deadlines. That's intense.
Talk about pressure. She even talks about using these countdown apps to track all the deadlines.
Oh gosh, I can relate to that feeling.
But here's the thing. Amidst all that chaos, she felt this weird sense of validation.
Like she was proving something.
Exactly, like she was finally living up to that hustle ideal everyone talks about.
Sacrificing sleep, pushing her limits, always striving for more. I think a lot of us have been there.
It's that always-on mentality. It can be seductive.
Definitely. But looking back, Beverley recognizes how unsustainable it was.
And how it actually worked against her in the end.
She makes a good point about the difference between working hard and just being exhausted.
It's not the same thing.
It's like trying to sprint a marathon.
Yeah.
You might get a burst of energy, but you'll probably crash before the finish line.
That's a great analogy. She actually compares it to rewarding a long-distance runner for only sprinting.
Doesn't make much sense, does it?
Not really, but that's often how we approach productivity.
We prioritize intensity over sustainability.
And end up sacrificing our well-being just to appear busy.
She's also honest about how she used to get caught up in that trap.
How?
Posting those late-night Instagram stories to show how dedicated she was.
Feeding that hustle narrative.
It's so common these days.
It's like we're looking for validation for being exhausted instead of prioritizing what truly matters.
Now she's shifted to a more balanced and sustainable approach,
Like taking weekends off.
which can feel almost revolutionary in our always-on culture.
It is. She emphasizes getting enough sleep and making time for things she enjoys.
Spending time with friends, watching a movie, those sorts of things.
It's refreshing to see that shift, recognizing that rest is essential for a fulfilling and productive life.
It's about treating ourselves like human beings.
Now, Beverley dives even deeper into how our whole idea of productivity has gotten warped.
How do you mean?
We've moved away from valuing actual effectiveness.
And towards glorifying overwork.
It's become an end in itself.
We're so focused on showcasing our busyness,
Equating long hours with being virtuous.
even when it's hurting us.
And this messed up view of productivity shows up in our language, too.
Oh, interesting. Like how
Think about the words we use: lazy-driven workaholic.
we judge people's worth based on how much they seem to be working.
It can be really harmful.
She even brings up some scary statistics about the dangers of overwork.
Like the Japanese term kroshi, which means death from overwork.
Wow, that's a stark reminder of how serious this is.
It makes you question if our current work models are even effective,
She also touches on the issue of unpaid labor.
especially in internships and work experience placements.
These positions often demand long hours and a lot of effort without any pay,
Which can make it hard for young people starting out.
and perpetuates inequality.
It's a problem with the system itself.
But Beverley doesn't just point out the problems. She offers solutions too.
What does she suggest?
She encourages us to completely rethink our approach to productivity,
Shifting our focus from quantity to quality.
redefining what success actually looks like,
Identifying the tasks that truly move us forward and prioritizing those.
instead of getting caught up in busy work that just creates the illusion of accomplishment.
It's about being strategic with our time and energy.
She advocates for working smart, not just hard.
Using techniques like effective time management, delegating tasks when possible, and getting good at prioritizing.
She also stresses understanding our personal energy levels.
Some people work best in short bursts, while others need a more steady pace.
It's about knowing yourself and what works for you.
Creating systems that support your individual style.
Then Beverley brings it back to self-care,
Seeing it as a vital tool for better productivity.
instead of something we feel guilty about.
Exactly. She breaks down doing nothing into those two categories we talked about.
Right, plan nothing and fuck it nothing.
Planned nothing is those intentional breaks we schedule into our lives.
Weekends, vacations, evenings set aside for relaxation.
It's about proactively preventing burnout.
Then there's fuck it nothing, which is more spontaneous.
When we have to surrender to exhaustion or just a lack of motivation and prioritize rest.
Even if it means changing our plans.
Both types of nothing are important for our well-being and, surprisingly, our productivity.
It's about understanding that rest isn't the opposite of getting things done.
It's actually a crucial part of it.
She also reminds us that procrastination can sometimes be a sign we need a break.
We should pay attention to those signals our body and mind are sending us,
She even admits to overscheduling herself socially in the past.
just to avoid being alone.
I think many of us can relate to that.
It shows how important it is to get comfortable with spending time by ourselves.
And to value that time. And she offers some great tips for incorporating more nothing into our daily routines.
Like taking walks, listening to music, doing things we enjoy.
He also encourages us to be more aware of how we use social media.
Recognizing that it can be a major energy drain and make us feel inadequate.
She suggests taking breaks from social media, putting our phones away, and unfollowing accounts that bring us down.
It's about being intentional with our technology use.
Making sure it serves us, not the other way around. Now let's move on to Beverley's analysis of having it all.
Right.
She traces the evolution of that phrase from its empowering roots in the 80s.
To the more pressure-filled version we see today.
She argues that the modern having it all isn't really about breaking down barriers anymore.
It's more about perfectly juggling way too many roles.
Exactly. It's this pressure to be amazing at everything.
Our careers, our relationships, our hobbies, our fitness, everything.
And present this perfectly balanced image online.
It's an impossible standard for most of us.
And social media just makes it worse.
It creates this illusion of perfection that distorts our view of reality.
We compare ourselves to these curated online personas and end up feeling like we're not enough.
Which can be incredibly damaging.
While the having it all issue impacts everyone. Beverley points out the specific challenges women still face.
In what way?
She cites studies showing that many employers still view motherhood as a career obstacle.
Highlighting the biases that haven't gone away.
She also points out how it's common to ask women about their family plans at work.
But men rarely get asked the same questions.
It shows this expectation that women should excel in both their family and work lives.
Without enough support.
So how do we escape this trap of having it all?
Beverley's answer is to redefine it on our own terms.
Letting go of those external expectations.
And figuring out what truly matters to us individually.
She uses this great analogy of a life pie.
Where each slice represents a different part of our lives.
Work relationships, self-care, personal growth, and so on.
It's about deciding what ingredients we want in our own pie.
And making sure it reflects our values and priorities.
And the great thing about this analogy is that it emphasizes flexibility.
Our priorities change over time.
And our life pie can change too. Some slices might get bigger or smaller.
It's about finding a balance that works for us.
So how do we actually create this personalized life pie?
Well, Beverley gives some practical steps.
Like,
first, we need to be really honest with ourselves about what truly matters.
Are we chasing goals because we actually want to, or because of pressure from others?
Are we doing things that align with our values?
It's about getting real with ourselves.
Once we've identified those core ingredients, then it's time to plan.
Just like we plan our work tasks?
We need to schedule time for those other important parts of our lives.
Whether it's family time, creative pursuits, or exercise.
It's about making them a priority.
But we also need to be flexible.
Life happens.
Our plans will need to adjust sometimes.
If work gets demanding, maybe we need to temporarily shrink other areas of our life.
It's about finding a sustainable rhythm that allows us to handle those ups and downs.
Beverley actually shares a story about her own journey with self-acceptance.
What happened?
She was talking to her best friend, who pointed out how Beverley's self-criticism was impacting others.
Creating this negative cycle.
It was a wake-up call for Beverley.
It made her realize how much she relied on external validation.
Measuring her worth by things like likes and followers.
Which is so easy to do in today's world.
We're bombarded with messages about what a successful life should look like.
Beverley made a conscious choice to shift her focus inward.
Prioritizing her values and self-acceptance over seeking approval from others.
It's a good reminder that true happiness comes from within.
She talks about setting boundaries with social media.
Recognizing how it can drain us and distort our view of reality.
She encourages us to be mindful of who we follow.
To unfollow accounts that make us feel bad.
And prioritize those real-life connections.
It's about making sure technology serves us.
Now let's touch on Beverley's thoughts on self-love and embracing imperfection.
Okay.
She acknowledges the pressure to present this perfect image.
Especially online.
She reminds us not to compare ourselves to others.
Because those online personas are often just a highlight reel.
It's about remembering that we're all human.
With our own strengths and weaknesses.
Everyone makes mistakes, has setbacks, and areas where they struggle.
It's part of being alive.
And Beverley encourages us to embrace those imperfections.
To see them as part of what makes us unique.
It's about shifting from striving for perfection to striving for progress.
Recognizing that life is a journey, not a destination.
And that real growth comes from facing challenges and learning from our mistakes.
Beverley's overall message is one of hope and empowerment.
Reminding us that we have the power to shape our own lives
Or define our own version of success.
and create a world that reflects our values,
It's about breaking free from the pressure to conform.
embracing who we are and living authentically.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'll turn it back over to our host for a recap and a final thought.
Whew, that was quite a journey through Grace Beverley's Working Hard, Hardly Working.
Her book really makes you rethink how we approach work and life in this day and age.
It's full of these thought-provoking ideas about productivity, self-care, and finding that elusive balance.
I think what makes Beverley's message so powerful is that she's so open about her own experiences.
The good and the bad.
It makes her feel relatable, like she's figuring things out alongside us.
Not preaching from some high horse.
It's more about embracing the messiness and constantly adapting as our lives change.
So true.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, we promised to distill Beverley's wisdom into a 10-point summary.
A toolkit for navigating the modern work world.
Ready to dive into those key takeaways?
Absolutely. Let's start with ditching that hustle culture mentality.
Overworking doesn't equal productivity.
Focus on working smart and being effective, not just putting in tons of hours.
It's about making those hours count. Second, we need to embrace our micro-passions.
Find those little things you actually enjoy about your work, even if it's not your dream job.
They can be surprisingly powerful motivators.
And they can actually boost your creativity. Third, understand and utilize the power of flow.
Figure out what helps you get into that hyper-focused state.
And learn to manage those flow states so you don't burn yourself out.
It's a delicate balance. Fourth, unleash your unique creativity.
Don't be afraid to bring your personality and innovative thinking to your work.
Even in tasks that might seem boring.
Leave your mark. Fifth, embrace the possibility of failure.
Don't let the fear of messing up hold you back from trying new things.
See mistakes as learning opportunities. Stress test your ideas and get feedback.
Sixth, master the art of doing nothing.
It's not lazy, it's essential.
Schedule those intentional breaks into your life.
And don't feel guilty about taking time to recharge. Seventh, define what having it all means to you.
Forget about those external expectations and societal pressure.
To figure out your own values and priorities.
And build a life that reflects those.
Eighth, be kind to yourself. You're not a machine.
Acknowledge your limits and take breaks when you need them.
Your well-being is just as important as your professional goals. Ninth, experiment and find what works for you.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Try different strategies and figure out what helps you thrive.
And finally, remember that it's a journey, not a destination.
Our priorities and circumstances are constantly changing.
Be flexible, adapt, and keep evolving.
Those are 10 powerful nuggets of wisdom from Grace Beverley.
They offer a framework for navigating the complexities of work and life today.
And remember, this is just the beginning.
Beverley's book is a springboard for deeper reflection.
Take these insights, experiment with them, and see what resonates with you.
Find your own micro-passions and embrace the art of doing nothing.
And above all, be kind to yourself along the way.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought.
What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Not just in terms of your career, but in terms of the impact you have on the world.
How can you live a life that allows you to make a difference while taking care of yourself?
Let that question guide you as you move forward.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into working hard, hardly working.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
Until next time, happy diving.